This episode is brought to you by Lumina Growth Lab. At Lumina, we help professional learning and development companies who are struggling with predictable lead flow, breaking out beyond their network, and a sniper approach to attracting the ideal clients so they can have a smoother sales process, finally have scalability, and ultimately take their business to the next level. Most of the time, our clients come to us frustrated because business has fundamentally changed since the pandemic and now the disruption of AI. But with the right strategy and support, they're able to confidently add new channels of lead generation, leading to a packed pipeline that creates sustainable revenue and year-over-year growth for cheaper than ever before because of the use of AI technologies. If that sounds like you or someone you know, connect with me on LinkedIn and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you about unlocking your business's potential. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the Marketing Matrix. I'm your host, Lisanne Murphy, and today I am joined by the talented, curious, and innovative Kyle Butler. Kyle, thank you so much for coming onto the show today.
Absolutely, Lisanne. Thank you so much for hosting me. Very excited to be here.
Yeah, guys, I am really excited for this conversation. I met Kyle recently, and in our conversation that we had, I don't know that I've ever met someone that's like as passionate as emerging technology as he is, and also does something as unique. Like you guys are seriously in for a treat here with Kyle. So let me take a second to introduce him a little bit more formally, and then we're going to dive into our conversation. So Kyle has worked with creating more robust directors and officers and cybersecurity insurance for blockchain-based companies. At Hidden Keys, he helps consult businesses with risk management, business development, and funding with access to major resources to help any middle market business achieve their objectives. So again, when he gets into like what he's actually doing, guys, I'm just like really, it's going to be juicy. I'm really excited. So again, Kyle, welcome to the Marketing Matrix. I'm excited to have you.
Thank you, Lisanne, once again, and I'm very excited to be here.
Okay, so for people that aren't as familiar with your journey, I would love for you to give kind of a background of like how you got into this cybersecurity insurance for blockchain-based companies. Like first of all, like how you got into that and then what that even means. Because I think a lot of people are like, okay, I know all those words individually, but like what does it mean altogether?
Absolutely. So I kind of fell into blockchain insurance because I started working for a publicly traded insurance broker for property casualty insurance, and I saw a major need in the blockchain industry for what's called directors and officers insurance. That's really protecting everyone who is in the capital stack, as well as depending on the nature of the investment, certain investor types would fall under this protection category. With that being said, a blockchain is strictly internet based, so cybersecurity is a must. Being able to protect digital assets as well as protecting from website crashes, different types of phishing and hacking expeditions, as well as just securing the data, digital information, potentially even cryptocurrency that is held on chain. These where these insurance products come to play. With that being said, it wasn't very mature in the marketplace in 2022 and 2023, and I helped work with some of the biggest insurance and reinsurance brands in the space to bring higher limits, to bring stronger policy forms, and to ultimately bring a more robust, secure option for risk management for these type of companies.
Nice. So is it companies that are like building blockchain type technology, or is it companies that have some of their holdings in blockchain currencies, or maybe is it some of both?
I would say traditionally, at least for right now, it's practically impossible, very similar to a stock. You can't insure necessarily a created cryptocurrency. What you can insure, however, is a construction company that's utilizing blockchain technology to allow for project managers as well as creatives on the inside. I guess they would be interior designers. They're using AI goggles, very similar to Meta or Apple Vision Pro, and they're able to utilize that blockchain technology to see through walls, make adjustments in real time with measurements. We're thinking remodeling of kitchens, remodeling of bathrooms, remodeling of bedrooms. Now, utilizing those technologies is something brand new to the insurance space. And that is really the company we're aiming to try to help insure. You can't really insure the actual currency per se. So it's really utilizing the underlying technology. The exposure is majorly internet based, and that's where these two products come into play so heavily. as you can imagine, blockchain type businesses require tons and tons of R&D and funding. And that's where you're involving the risk of the directors and officers.
Interesting. So can you share with the audience some of the just wild technologies that are emerging that you've either been privy to see a little bit of or you're working with currently?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a very fascinating world from the creation of what we're calling digital humans. The company that is working to create and bring to fruition the concept of digital humans. This is actually a intersection of intellectual property rights, commonplaces known as name, image, and likeness rights, NIL, and the utilization of what we would consider a deepfake mixed with AI technology. Now, what's very unique is this particular brand is set in an intersection where it's accomplishing working with the states to allow for a legal definition of usage of a digital name, image, and likeness of their persona, I should say. With that being said, that digital creation is now an extension of the said actor, athlete, famous person. Now, multiple industries can utilize the digital version of the said actor in product placements, movies, ads, music, anything you can practically think of. The artist and the state are winning. They don't feel like people have duplicated their imagery. And then ultimately, they're pressing forward where now one individual can actually be anywhere at any time and everywhere in every place all at once. So very
That's
radical
crazy.
technology in the digital human and kind of merging with blockchain technology mixed with AI. Some of the other very, very creative technologies that we're seeing are shockingly enough, there's a major record producing brand that is working on fully electric cruise ships. Kind of mind blowing to think that we could have a Tesla version of a cruise ship, but these cruise ships are, manning anywhere from 1,500 to 3,000 individuals on the ship. The ship has a radius of roughly 200 miles, but they are fully electric, going from place to place out in the British Virgin Islands is actually where we're contemplating having the first round of testing between hotels that are going to be sharing a very unique musical compound, both think 5-star hotel mixed with a concert series, very much not like the Friar Festival. This will actually occur. But beyond that, very interesting mixture of thinking about the environment, thinking about new versions of entertainment. What does the vacation of the future really look like? And I think it's obviously going to be mixed with technology, interactive experiences, much more than just we went to do a ride or an event. And I think ultimately everyone needs to be paying attention to how do we treat the environment while accomplishing our entertainment and goals.
How the insurance works in terms of like are you just insuring the technology portion of for example, the technology integrated into the fabric of the clothing, or is it like a bundled deal where it's because this is like a whole new industry, a whole new product type that you're insuring it together? How does that work?
So that's a great question. And I'm very lucky to be in a very unique position because I don't work for a direct, what you would consider an insurance broker. I actually partner with 3 of the biggest insurance brokers in the world. And so the uniqueness about what we're doing is it's really a la carte to the client, right? The client can choose to allow me to introduce him to all 3 brands, him or her, I apologize, will allow me to introduce him to all 3 major brands. We would focus in on what is most important, whether it is they have not been able to reach the limits that are needed for the cybersecurity. And in that instance, it's not that it's a new category, it's that there's not a robust category fitting to the levels of performance that they're hitting. A blockchain company could be making 1, 2, 3, $400 million reasonably within the first 24 months. The average restaurateur is not getting near those revenue markers, which means their exposure in these particular risk categories, there simply isn't enough padding, quote unquote. So where my unique value proposition comes in is that I'm a consultant that's plugging them into multiple different offered brokers that are going to provide a solution, whether in totality of every insurance product that they need, to include things like health insurance or even workers' comp, or they're going to focus a very, I would say, scientific program specifically tailored to the extremes of the blockchain, the cybersecurity, and then focusing in on what does their cap stack look like and how do we protect those directors and officers.
Interesting. So do companies even know that they need this? Like, are they looking for a solution, or like, are you having to do quite a bit of education to like go to them and be like, hey, like the technology that you're integrating is under insured, and it's really important that you pay attention to the security of this, and so like you're educating, or are they looking for the solution?
I would say both. I think individuals are aware that it is their exposure and they may be actively seeking a solution for directors and officers or cybersecurity. I think there's also 50% of the clientele that either lack the education, are very young, and so they've created something radical and new that is starting to generate revenue without having that business experience of all the moving pieces of what it takes to set a foundational company and then bring it to the levels of earnings that they're making. And thirdly, I think the education portion, a lot of it is actually being pushed and directed by their investors. Their investors are very well aware of these particular insurance products because 90% of the time they simply sit on the board. They're an investor and they're on the board, and that is the policy that affects them. So they're helping couple the education. And that's why I kind of fell into a space that's in the matrix between connecting funders with great clients and then also looking under the lens of risk management and putting both sides together so that the funder feels comfortable with who they've placed their investment in, and the investee is feeling comfortable that they've mitigated the risk of differences between the investor and themselves, and then ideas and differences between the totality of investors and the expectations of the board.
Interesting. So is your customer more the VCs and the funders, or is it the technology companies
Yes.
themselves?
My customer is typically the company that is seeking very unique alternative finance funding. They're seeking equity funding or radical debt funding, and they're also interested in the overall concept of risk mitigation. They're really seeking multiple avenues, right? Typically, the company that's looking to raise capital also has very high ambitions for business development, and that's where we plug into some of the other companies that we funded in the past or that we've been successful in placing with an RIA or a family office that has funded. And so we have a very unique approach where we're looking at the landscape of who are our prior clients and where do they intersect? You know, how does the company that is building 100%, or I'm sorry, 150-mile-an-hour windproof building materials that is a 1,000-degree fire retardant mix with our major land developer that has multiple big name 5-star flag hotel operations that they want to start building in the Caribbean? And how do we place those two in a bucket together where they're both achieving a goal while also keeping in mind that overarching goal: climate control, green technology, blue technology, investor friendly, tax haven? So we
Hmm.
think in a very, I would say, combined fashion where we're not looking just to plug someone into a funder and send them on their way. We want to plug them into a funder that fully understands that our goal and scope is to grow their business tenfold by actively pursuing business development in between the funding.
Interesting. Super interesting. So what do you do to find these companies and find these emerging technologies?
So very similar to how me and you have met, my original methodology of finding clients is directly through LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is one of the most powerful tools to achieve the idea of getting a hold of someone that you never thought would respond to you. I cannot tell you how many times that I've reached out directly to individuals that should have never responded to my DMs that immediately responded to my DMs. And if you're adding value in a content piece that really projects something unique and new, most individuals who are looking for any type of growth whatsoever will take 10 to 15 minutes to speak with you. And in that moment, you just have to build the value and understand what you're trying to achieve. But really, truly, word of mouth and actively pursuing very unique individuals via LinkedIn, social media, and other methodologies that aren't your traditional calling up a 1-800 number, asking for Phil, and trying to get through 10 to 15 gatekeepers.
It sounds like are you kind of like a I don't know. Do you know what real estate wholesaling is?
Yes, ma'am.
So are you kind of a wholesaler then of
I would say so.
because you're
Yes,
like
correct.
you're a deal connector. That's just that's
Exactly.
okay.
Exactly. If you ever seen or heard of the book Super Connectors, I've essentially tried to turn my consulting business into monetizing that concept. How do we
That's cool.
monetize our actual network, but truly provide value? And for me, the one thing I've noticed is You have to be able to get individuals on the phone with the counterparty when you say you can. And if you could do just that entrance point, 90% of people who broker deals, who attempt to do wholesale, they simply can't get the counterparty on the phone. And I think that's the linchpin. If you can deliver and setting the table and putting the parties into the conversation together, you will inevitably see success because people respect the fact that when you make a phone call, the other party answers.
Yeah. And the counterparty in this case being the funder.
Correct. Whether it's the funder or I'm connecting you to the other business because we're about to do a business development deal, or, of course, referrals right into those big three
Insurance.
international insurance brokers.
Yeah.
So I have a
Oh,
unique
interesting.
position where I've contracted with all these individual companies, whether family office or insurance brokerage. And now my job is simply to connect,
Yeah.
add
That's awesome.
value, set the table, bring a lot of education. And the unique part is I'm truly in my client's corner because I don't have a dog in the fight either way. My job is simply to put them in front of something to make them make a decision that makes sense for their business. And
Yeah.
so it's a very warming position to know that I get to act as if I'm internal, but no liability of being internal, which is always nice.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love it. So, what's the most frustrating part of that? Because like I can tell like you're like personally really passionate about it, but like it's probably like herding cats a lot of the times, right? To like get everyone in the same room at the same time and on the same page, making sure everyone's speaking the same language. And I did real estate wholesaling for a little while, and so I might be projecting here because from my own experience. But what's the most like the stickiest point for you with this business model?
I think the endurance of long sales cycles.
Mm,
It's truly a long sales cycle. If someone's asking you to attempt to find them 10, 15, 20, $30 million, not every person can scratch that check. And then there's layers to the education to the client on understanding, well, what are they actually trying to achieve? And then do they fully understand the scope of what it means to have other people's money now involved with their baby? Because as soon as you start injecting other people's money, there's fiduciary responsibilities, but there's also moral and ethical responsibilities to understanding how to be a good steward of an investment. And I think that's really the hardest part is that a startup is so focused on the next breath, the next step, the next rung, that it's hard to get the CEO or the CFO or the CRO to take a step back and see the bigger picture and understand how certain parts are moving intertwined with why they're making the investment and the expectations. And I think a lot of it is just resistance in education. And some people get very laser focused, what we call tunnel vision. And you have to get a CEO who's very much an A personality. They're a driver. Their expectation is they command and people fulfill those commands for the greater goal of the business. And we have to give them a little bit of pushback. And that would be the one difficulty in the job is, being someone who's usually 30 to 40 years younger than my counterparties and giving them advice on something that they've created and poured their own money into. And so that would be the part that's the most difficult.
yeah, yeah, no doubt. So, and then if you're comfortable with sharing, you don't have to, but are you paid only on the back end, or like do you have a front end engagement as well, like for brokering the deal, or is it really just the win of the deal on the back end?
90% of the time, it's usually on the back end. There are occasions where there may be some upfront fees, but traditionally we only eat if we service the client and are successful in our endeavors.
Yeah. So do you have a pretty robust process to qualify to make sure that like the person you're about to like do a ton of work for is like that they're legit, like they'll go through if the funder agrees, like do you have a really robust qualification process?
Absolutely. I mean, traditionally, one, we like to bet on people, right? So the first aspect of any type of evaluation or what we would consider vetting, it's really just a good 15 to 30 to 45-minute conversation with the owner to see who they are, what do they believe in, and what are they actually trying to achieve? Because ultimately, investments only work if both parties are vested in the success. Now, without question, there's VCs who are in it for just the return, and they probably won't add the same amount of value as an investor who wants to be hands-on. And that's where our value proposition comes in. It's getting the client to make the best choice of which one's going to be the good fit for what they're seeking.
And I'm also super curious, are you a lone wolf maverick in this space? Do you have a team that you work with? Is there a lot of competition? Are there other like wholesale funder brokers? Like, Like, talk to me about some of the team dynamics and the competition in this space.
Absolutely. And I would say 100% there is loads and loads of competition. In terms of my team, it's very much external partnerships. We definitely do make up a team. I have a core circle of about 6 individuals that all have different functions, right? One is a CIO and CFO of multifamily offices, and he's really the individual that I'm going to lean towards for conversations about private equity, conversations about any major financial instrument, anything relevant to mergers and acquisitions. It's really going to go to him, who's going to guide to RIAs, family offices, or private equity firms. I have some individuals that strictly deal in what we call alternative financing. It could be a simple merchant cash advance. It could be something as convoluted as equipment financing and mortgage financing for multiple locations, trying to get them $1 to $5 million. They also have opportunities for purchase order financing as well as accounts receivable. Then I have my 3 major hubs of insurance. With their opportunities, I have teams that are assigned to me. So when I'm referring in a client, they are now assigned to a specific team in a specific track, whether they were a construction client or a technology client. I have individual teams within that organization that are assigned to my referrals, very similar to some of our low-level debt financing, which is your very traditional, we're a brand new startup, we need a $35,000 SBA loan. Kyle, who do we turn to? So we really have different avenues. And then I also do a lot of placement with what's called payroll, or a lot of people know it as PEO.
Cool. I love it. Yeah. So really, I mean, it's a game of partnerships and relationships, it sounds like.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
exactly it.
Well, that's cool.
And building that trust where you have the ability to, in effect, represent their brand without representing their brand, which is very hard to achieve. Because I'm not a W-2, I'm uncontrolled by these particular brands, and a lot of them are publicly traded. The expectation is that I'm not advertising on behalf of that brand, but that I'm also representing that brand well enough to know that I am a partner, a guider, and someone who's influencing purchases from those said brands.
That totally makes sense. Cool. Okay. So, and what are some of like your big goals for 2026? Like, what are you excited for? Because there's so much technology booming right now, and what are your goals?
So some of my goals for 2026 is increase pipeline activity, roughly 20 to 30%. And that's really going to come down to activities like this that get my name, the business name Hidden Keys, out there further, and gets opportunities to generate in-mail, DMs, and opportunities that otherwise hadn't reached me yet through some of our referring channels. Some of the major goals overarching besides my personal financial goals, I want to help achieve the most radical technology to fruition via funding, via insurance, via debt instruments. I think if there's businesses, brands, and companies out there that are achieving something incredible in the medical device space that is also utilizing AI, blockchain, or any type of technology beyond it being a medical device or whatever they're creating, these are the businesses that we're aiming to put in a position where there is plenty of funders and get them the success they need, i.e. the gasoline, so they can get on the track and race. The goal is to make impacts on the earth with businesses that are going to be here 20, 30, 40 years from now. Very similar to the individuals who got the opportunity to invest in OpenAI 4, 5, 6 years ago. That is a vision, and I believe that we're seeing that OpenAI is probably going to become the next Google. And with that being said, Google's been around for almost 20, 25 years now. They're a staple. I don't know anyone who uses DuckDuckGo, so not knocking DuckDuckGo, but I'm simply pointing out that they have become legitimately synonymous with the internet and search engines. And I believe that there's technologies that are being built in someone's basement right now that they simply need the introduction to the funders. And that's the goal, is so that we can have businesses make real world impacts, change society for a better, but also utilize the technology to bring people together.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Such a powerful mission and goal as well.
Yes,
So, and do you typically work with companies that are like in their first series of funding, or not necessarily? Like it could be a second or third series.
Traditionally, at least in terms of some of the access that we have to the type of funding that they're seeking, they're wanting them to be what we call seed plus. But traditionally, they're not a startup. They're not completely without revenues, and they've never not raised capital before. But they're by no means what's considered institutional, looking for a Series A or a Series B. Because at that point they're probably looking for 50, 100, 200, $300 million, and that is much more meant for a Morgan and Stanley, a BlackRock, what have you. They're meant to kind of take over in that position. So we're really swimming in the waters that is the most underserved. You've grown just enough to be able to have a conversation about capital, but you're not there yet to be approaching one of the big giants that I aforementioned.
Yeah.
And that's who we help.
Yeah. No, that's cool. That totally makes sense. So yeah, so that's why I mean, and you mentioned like you're mostly partnering with like private equity
Private
companies,
equity are
right?
what's considered family offices, so they have a little flexibility in the way they can invest. They have different types of instruments. Well, I'm not a licensed broker, so I don't discuss the nature of the instruments. I get them connected to the licensed broker that does. So a lot
Yeah.
of it is simply having the access to the doors that they were unable to knock on.
Well, I think what you do, I mean, you're very personable. What you do is very unique, and I mean, I know you said you have lots of competition, but I haven't met anyone that does brokering in this way. And I mean, you're good with people, and so I have no doubt that there's lots of success coming your way. And so I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your passion for this field and everything that you brought to the marketing matrix today. So thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So for people that want to connect with you or get in touch with Hidden Keys or learn more about what you do or have a connection to a company that needs your services, where can they find you?
Absolutely. I think the best and fastest way to find me is through LinkedIn. Lisanne's going to drop a couple of my links, both for my business brand, Hidden Keys, as well as me personally. I think directly DM me. Once again, do not be afraid to reach out. You got a question, you need a contact, or you're looking through somewhere around 8,000 of my connections and there's someone that you wanted to meet, please don't hesitate to reach out. I will do my best to connect you.
I love that. Thanks so much for your generosity, and I love
Of
just how
course.
down to earth you are as well. I really appreciate it. All right, guys. So I'm going to put those links in the episode notes so you can link out to those directly. And again, Kyle, thank you so much for coming, and for those that are listening today, I really appreciate you. I mean, we know that your time is valuable, so for you to spend some moments with us means the absolute world. So until next time on the Marketing Matrix.